Hello. So I just filmed a kind of like, I wouldn't even say review so much as just chat about Milkweed by Jerry Spinelli. So you can go check that out if you're interested. But that's why I'm in the same clothes. I literally haven't moved. I just couldn't find the time to record it previously, and then I finished another book. So I was like, well, let's do two. So this time, moving on, I'm going to talk about Harvesting the Heart by Jodi Picoult. So just a little bit of background. I got this book. I didn't purchase this book. It was lent to me by a family member after I told them back in high school, actually. For context, I'm a full year of college now, so it's been a while. It's been on my to-read shelf that whole time. But I read another book by Jodi Picoult called The Pact, and I remember really enjoying it in high school. I couldn't speak to it too much now. It's been so long since I read it. I don't know how I would feel about it if I reread it, but I do know that I really enjoyed it at the time. And I mentioned that at a family gathering. People were just kind of asking what's up, and then the next time I saw them, they brought me this book. It's another book by the same author, because they said they were a big fan of Jodi Picoult's. So after hearing that I'd read one of them and enjoyed it, they were more than eager to carry me on my journey. So I have this book, like I said, that was in high school. So it's been probably at least 10 years, and it sat on my shelf, and I feel really terrible for not reading it sooner, because I generally, if someone wants to gift me a book, I would love to encourage that and read it and then, speak with them about it. So that's completely on me. But I guess let's move into more about this book itself. I'm gonna sit down because my feet are going to sleep. Oh well. So this book follows a large chunk really of this girl Paige's life. It starts with her leaving her home right after graduating high school. She goes to a new state on her own, where she meets this man named Nicholas, who she very promptly ends up getting married to. So that's not really a spoiler. That's just kind of like general trajectory of the novel. You can gather that just from reading the book. But I will say, trying not to give any spoilers on this one in case you are interested in reading it, and if I do, then I'll try to disclose beforehand. But overall perspective of the book, now that I finished it, I enjoyed it. Perspective of the book halfway through it. I remember sitting on the couch in my living room talking to my boyfriend about how much I'm struggling to get through it, and I have so many books on my shelf that I want to read that I was like, oh my goodness, I just need to get it out of the way so I can move on. And I can tell you why. It is because I could not relate to any of the characters at all. Now, there are plenty of people who I'm sure can relate, so this is a perspective of my own. It won't mirror other people's, I'm sure, but here's where, let that be the spoiler-free version. I can't relate to the characters, so I had a really difficult time getting invested in the book because I don't share any of their life circumstances. I still live in the same state I was born in. I hopefully plan to leave within the next few years, but money is an issue, so that's that. So I'm close to home. I have a boyfriend who I live with, but I'm not married. I do not have any children. The main character is Catholic, and that's something she kind of, battles with a little bit throughout, is her faith and her beliefs, and I don't feel that I have those same struggles that she had. And a big formative part of her life is that her mother was not present. Her mother left when she was 5, I believe, and that is a huge driving factor for her. And I still have my mother, so there are a lot of things that I couldn't relate to, a lot of struggles that I think for people who have similar circumstances, it might draw them into the book and might really help them form these connections and attachments to the characters, but for me, that wasn't there. And so I had a hell of a time getting invested. I think also just the way some of it is written was difficult for me to, again, kind of relate to. I do think throughout it, I sensed some religious themes, even in characters that maybe said that they weren't. You'd still see that influence, which my best guess would be that the author is, and it's just kind of showing through in the way that she builds worlds and creates characters. And that's something that, while not inherently bad, I don't have an issue with the character being religious or not religious or whatever. I just want it to be consistent. So I struggled a little bit with having a character define themselves in one way and saying, this is how I feel, and then in their internal dialogue kind of going back on those statements, which I understand that maybe that's something, again, that people relate to, because there are plenty of people in the world who think they feel one way, but maybe their heart's pulling them in another way, and that's just another part of it. But for me, as a reader reading it, it was something that actually bothered me. It kind of felt like maybe the author was pushing her feelings and worldviews onto the characters a little bit, which I don't love because it pulls me out of the story when that happens. Hi, Percy. If I have these characters and I've kind of I'm starting to learn who they are and what they feel and how they believe, and I'm following them on this journey, and then there's this outside kind of voice coming in a little bit, it doesn't help me become more invested in the story. It pulls me out of it. So those are my biggest complaints with this book. But as I said when I very first started this, I did enjoy it overall. I found myself about 3/4 of the way through the book being like, I don't relate to any of this, but I want to read the next page. So it's interesting because I think she has a good writing style, aside from my character flaws I was speaking about earlier, I guess. But by the end of the book, you're kind of rooting for them. You catch yourself, or at least I did, hoping things worked out, and pleading in my mind with the characters of, please, do X, Y, and Z. But I think the other thing is that started to happen for me more when there are more characters involved. So the other thing I will say about this book is that for the majority of the book, there aren't many characters. It's very much isolated between Paige and Nicholas, so the husband and wife duo that are at the center of things. And it isn't until later in the book that you have a few other characters start being more recurring. There are probably only 5 other characters whose names I could even think of. So there are a lot of temporary people. And I think I started to get more involved in the story whenever it felt like there was more happening, more of a world around them outside of just those two and their specific trials and tribulations. I like to have a fully formed world. To me, it makes it easier to jump into the universe of the book and kind of follow these people and become invested in their lives and their successes and their failures, versus it being just them. It feels like it's them on an island with nobody else around. So those are my thoughts, I guess. Overall, I would say if you were a fan of, you know what, I hope I don't offend anyone with this. If you're a fan of Hallmark movies or Lifetime movies, this is probably for you. This is you're gonna like it if you like that type of story, particularly in a book format rather than the movies. If you are more into something less slice of life, if you like a little more adventure, you want a little more world building, then this is not for you. And I think while I made it through and by the end I enjoyed it, I don't think this book was for me. And that's okay, because there are plenty of books that I've thoroughly enjoyed that so many people would not enjoy. So that's just kind of the fact of the matter. I don't think it's a bad book inherently, but I think it's not a book for me. So, is it a book for you? I don't know. Let me know if any of you guys have read it and what your thoughts were. Thanks. Bye.